5 men bought an attic with their wives for convenience. They took turns to play games in the attic with their heterosexual friends, and they didn't have to worry about additional consumption records. Just a few men singing in the attic all night led to a life that all scumbags envied. But such an exciting game soon went out of the blue. On this day, Mike, one of the 5, just came to the attic and found a naked woman dead on the bed. Her right hand was leaned against the bed, and there was a terrible fatal wound on her left arm. Looking at the bedsheet that had been soaked with blood, Mike was terrified. He quickly called the other 4 friends. The first one to arrive was the boss of the 5, Alvin. He was stunned when he saw this scene. When he saw Alvin, he didn't know who the woman on the bed was. Mike said he had checked the room. Everything was normal in the attic, and there was no alarm at the door, so it could be concluded that the murderer must have brought the key in, and that means the murderer must be among the 5 of them. Soon, the hair of one of the 5 came to the attic. When he saw the body, he thought of his brother, Xiaofei, because the other party was not only angry, but also often played some tricks like handcuffs. When the 2 were arguing, the 4th man also rushed here, and as the only doctor among the few, Alvin was also terrified, but he still came to the bedside to check the body. However, when he opened the pillow, there was a word engraved with blood on the bed. Looking at the inexplicable sentence in front of him, several people felt a little cold in their hearts. And as the only doctor among the few, Alvin was also terrified, but he still came to the bedside to check the body. However, when he opened the pillow, there was a word engraved with blood on the bed. Looking at the inexplicable sentence in front of him, several people felt a little cold in their hearts. They continued to call Xiaofei, but no one answered the phone. As they planned to split up to find the other party, Xiaofei came to the scene unexpectedly. Mike, who saw this scene, was about to collapse. He rushed up and pinched Xiaofei's neck angrily. Then he asked the other party why he did this. But at this time, Xiaofei was already dead. He said he had been drinking at his father-in-law's house last night, and many people present at the time could testify for themselves. This made the people present even more confused because there was no sign of knocking on the door of the attic. And this can be said that the murderer must have brought the key in. Since no one admits that he is the murderer, then the only possibility now is that someone gave the key to an outsider. Thinking of this, Alvin quickly took out his own key and asked others to take it out to prove that the key was not lost. But the curly hair on this side never took it out. Faced with the various doubts of the other people, Alvin had no choice but to admit that he did give the key to someone else. It turned out that Alvin had met a blonde beauty not long ago. After a few entanglements with the other person, he fell in love with the other person. Alvin said he wanted a divorce and stay with the blonde girl, but he was rejected by the other person. But even so, Alvin still entangled with the other person. Alvin had no choice but to make it clear to the blonde girl that he had already known the secret of the attic. So he thought Alvin was simply impulsive. Maybe a few days later, when he met other women, he would forget himself. And when Alvin heard this, he was shocked. He said he was not the kind of person who would give up easily. After that, he took out the key from his pocket and gave it to the blonde girl. He said he would only go to the attic with her in the future. When he heard the curly hair said the key was lost, the others lost their minds again. At this time, Mike suddenly found that Alvin's expression was a bit unnatural. Looking at the other person's depressed face, Mike called the other people to ask about the situation. But when Alvin was about to speak, the doorbell at the door suddenly rang. The curly hair picked up the phone and asked about it carefully. It turned out that the other person was an agent of a real estate company. He said that the attic had been sold by a woman named Sarah. It turned out that when Alvin went on a business trip abroad a few months ago, they met this woman named Sarah in a bar. And since then, Alvin has been in secret contact with the other person. What surprised him was that Sarah was accidentally pregnant after being with herself for a while, and he forced himself and his wife to divorce 3 days in a row. So Alvin asked the other person to come here last night and broke up with Sarah at the cost of this attic. When he heard Alvin refused to admit that he had killed someone, he picked up the knife on the bed in anger. Then he rushed forward and was ready to argue with Alvin. Fortunately, everyone tried to stop him. After everyone calmed down, he gave Alvin a glass of wine and told him to think about what happened last night. However, when Alvin recalled everything that happened, he suddenly felt dizzy and fell to the ground. In a daze, Alvin saw that the other 4 people were wearing gloves. calmly and said strange words while taking off his clothes. "No, we just found her." "What?" "We were here this morning, Vincent, before you arrived." It turned out that when Mike found Sarah this morning, he didn't call Alvin at first, but called the other. 3 friends here first. And Sarah didn't cut off her wrist at that time, but just ate a lot of sleeping pills and died. The 3 of them were going to move the body and bury the evidence for Alvin, but Mike firmly refused and said he would show a few people something different. It turned out that Mike had a special experience in his early years, so he had to keep an eye on everything he did. So he secretly installed a surveillance camera in the attic and kept a video of everyone's affair. But recently he came to check the surveillance camera and found something terrible. It turned out that Alvin, the scumbag, actually dug into everyone's corner. He not only secretly slept with Mike's wife, but even the golden-haired girl he pursued was also deceived by this scumbag. After watching the video, everyone was so angry that they didn't dare to believe that Alvin, who was so timid in daily life, was such a despicable villain. At this time, Mike also made his own decision. He said he could use the corpse of Sarah to frame Alvin and let the other party taste the taste of the prison of the family. And Mike said that in order to make Alvin's crime look more real, he even used a knife to cut Sarah's wrist and wrote the sentence with the other party's finger on the bed. After everything was set up, Mike called Alvin according to the plan. This is how everything happened later. And just like Mike's plan, Alvin was successfully identified by the police under the testimony of 4 good friends, but the police suddenly said something to Alvin according to the autopsy report. The cause of Sarah's death was not the overdose, but the excessive blood loss caused by cutting her wrist with a knife. Therefore, the police have classified this case as a criminal case and plan to reinvestigate to find a real murderer. When Alvin heard this, he felt dizzy. He knew that once the police carried out a profound investigation, his brother Xiaohei would be in trouble. When he thought of this, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. Since Mike had long known about Alvin's affair, why would he let Alvin mess up without stopping him? Therefore, he suspected that there must be another plot. When he thought of the liquor in the attic that Mike had been responsible for purchasing, he suddenly thought of something. He hurried back to the attic overnight and met Mike, who came to deal with the evidence. It went right along with your grand plan, didn't it? But why? Luke, what did you do to that girl? Did she get in your way? Between you and Vincent? Seeing that the truth had been exposed, Mike also told the truth, but he didn't expect to see more shameless behavior from Alvin. At this point, Mike's love for Sarah turned into hatred, so he was going to find a chance to take revenge on the 2 of them. And on that day, he happened to hear the news that Alvin and Sarah broke up, so he came to the attic quietly after Alvin left and used the liquor he had prepared in advance to confuse Sarah. Then he disguised the scene as an illusion of the other party's overdose of drugs. And in order to clear his relationship with all this, Mike also used the curly little brother, Xiaofei, to help him give Sarah the last fatal blow. After finishing his perfect plan, Mike didn't feel any guilt at all, but instead pulled out a knife and forced Alvin to the balcony. Seeing that his ex-friend was completely crazy, Alvin also knew that there was no point in saying anything now, so he rushed forward and fought with Mike. Unexpectedly, he took the knife in the other person's hand, and at this time, there was a siren downstairs. It turned out that Alvin had already called the police, so no matter how hard Mike struggled, it was all in vain. At the end of the movie, the headless Mike slowly stood at the edge of the balcony and then chose to jump off the building without hesitation. Until then, all the truths were revealed one by one with the death of Mike.